One type of irony in the open window is situational irony. Don't forget, situational irony is when a situation turns out differently than expected. Mr. Nuttall, his first name is Frampton, goes to this country town on what it says in the first circle, a rural retreat. His sister decides to write him a letter of introduction, which leads him to meeting Mrs. Sappleton. He goes there because he has a type of nerve condition. He wanted to relax. And this is further revealed in the second circle when he tells Mrs. Sappleton how his doctor has told him to avoid mental excitement, to avoid physical exercise. And as we continue to read the story, we know that he has been given this fib, this story about Mrs. Sappleton from Vera being Mrs. Sappleton's niece, on how Mrs. Sappleton is dealing with this grief of the anniversary of her husband and his two brothers going away on this hunt and never returning. So she keeps the window open, the open window, keeping the window open in hopes that they will return. So here Mr. Nuttall is thinking that Mrs. Sappleton is this person with, a bigger problem than he has. And at the end of the story, Mrs. Sappleton thinks that Mr. Nuttall is the one with the problem because he sees these men coming through this open window, which is, I'm sure, like sliding doors. He sees these men coming home from their hunt, and he thinks that they are ghosts because they have been gone for so many years and being lost in, these marshes. So he runs off, where I have it starred in the yellow. Frampton grabbed wildly at his stick and hat. The hall door, the gravel drive, and the front gate went dimly noted stages in this headlong retreat. So he goes there. Here's your situational irony answer. He goes to this country town to become relaxed, but he is more on edge when he leaves. Type of irony in the open window is verbal irony. When a character says one thing, it means another. It can be a form of sarcasm. It can also be just a straight out lie. Vera in the open window is a liar. She tells this huge fib to Mr. Frampton, knowing that he is not familiar with the town, not very familiar with her aunt, and she just has fun with it. And that's what makes this story have some humor to it. On the first part of the screen here, she tells this story. You may wonder why we keep that window wide open on an October afternoon, said the niece, indicating a large French window that opened onto a lawn. It is quite warm for this time of year, said Frampton, but has that window got anything to do with the tragedy? Out through that window 3 years ago to a day, her husband and her two young brothers went off for their day's shooting. They never came back. In crossing the moor to their favorite snipe shooting ground, they were all three engulfed in a treacherous piece of bog. It had been that dreadful wet summer, in places that were safe and in other years gave way suddenly without warning. Their bodies were never recovered. That was the dreadful part of it. Here the child's voice lost its self-possessed note and became falteringly human. Poor aunt always thinks that they will come back someday, they and the little brown spaniel that was lost with them, and walk in at that window just as they used to do. That is why the window is kept open every evening, till it is quite dusk. Poor dear aunt, she has often told me how they went out, her husband with his white waterproof coat over his arm, and Ronnie, her youngest brother, singing, "Birdie, why do you bound?" as he always did to tease her. So one form of verbal irony is the story about the hunt and the men never coming back. So for your answer, verbal irony, Vera's story about the men never coming back from the hunt. There's also a second example of verbal irony that you could have written down, and that's on the bottom part of the screen. "I expect it was the spaniel," said the niece calmly. "He told me he had a horror of dogs. He was once hunted into a cemetery somewhere on the banks of the Ganges by a pack of pariah dogs, and had to spend the night in a newly dug grave with the creature snarling and grinning and foaming just above him, enough to make anyone lose their nerve." So another fib, making the aunt have a story for why Mr. Frampton ran off as he did, which is another complete lie. Pariah, by the way. I'm not sure if I mispronounced that while I was reading that part of the story. So another form of verbal irony, the story about Mr. Frampton being afraid of spaniels. Dramatic irony. We, as readers, know something the character does not. This is at the end of the story when we are finally showed that Vera is a liar. Whenever Vera tells her aunt that Mr. Frampton Nuttall is afraid of spaniels, that is why he ran off, we know something that her aunt, Mrs. Stapleton, does not. We know Vera is a liar, but Mrs. Stapleton doesn't. That is your dramatic irony.